The warning sirens echoed through Terra Command Station as Admiral Marcus Kane rushed to the communication center. He had never heard these particular alarms before. They meant only one thing: first contact with an unknown alien species. "What do we have, Lieutenant?" Kane asked as he entered the bustling control room. Lieutenant Chris Baker looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from outside our solar system. It's definitely not human technology. The signal is incredibly powerful, broadcasting on every frequency we can detect." Kane moved to the main viewing screen. Static filled the display, but slowly an image began to form. The face that appeared was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Crystalline features caught the light, creating rainbow patterns across its transparent skin. When it spoke, the words came through a universal translator. "People of Earth," the being said, its voice carrying desperation. "I am Velther, of the Xantharian Collective. We know you exist. We know you are watching the stars. Please, if you can hear this message, we need your help." Captain Lisa Bennett stepped forward. As Earth's chief xenobiologist, she had trained for this moment her entire career. "Admiral, this is incredible. Look at the bone structure, the way the light refracts through its skin. This being evolved in a completely different environment from Earth." Commander Jake Morrison joined them at the screen. His military training made him focus on different details. "Sir, look at the background. That's not a peaceful diplomatic vessel. I can see blast damage, emergency lighting. This creature is in serious trouble." Velther continued speaking, unaware that humans were finally listening. "Our coalition of 12 species faces complete destruction. The void-born swarm has awakened after millions of years. They consume entire star systems, turning all matter into more machines for their endless fleet." The image shifted to show massive dark ships moving through space like hungry locusts. They surrounded a beautiful blue planet, and within hours, the world was nothing but stripped rock and metal debris. 47 worlds have fallen in the past 6 months. Velther's voice broke with emotion. The Nexari Empire fell in 3 days. The Carillion defense fleet was destroyed in hours. Even the mighty Zeben war machines could not stop them. Kane felt his stomach tighten. He had spent 30 years in Earth's space forces, fighting pirates and rebels. But this was something far beyond human experience. Bennett was recording everything, her scientific mind racing. "Admiral, if this is real, we're looking at a threat that has already destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. These other species have been traveling between stars for thousands of years." Morrison studied the tactical displays showing the alien battles. "Their ships are massive, sir. Each one looks like it could take on our entire fleet. But look at how they fight. Very organized, very predictable. They move in perfect formations." The transmission continued. Velther's crystalline form flickered as his ship shook from some distant explosion. "We have studied your species from afar. You call your world Earth, but others know it by a different name. They call it a death world, a planet so dangerous that only the strongest creatures can survive." Kane exchanged glances with his officers. They had never heard this term before. "Your gravity is 3 times stronger than most inhabited worlds. Your weather patterns would kill most galactic species within hours. You have multiple types of deadly radiation from your star. Poison fills your air and water. Massive predators hunt in every environment. Yet somehow, you not only survived, but became the dominant species." Bennett whispered to Kane. "He's describing Earth as if it's some kind of nightmare planet. But to us, it's just home." Velther's image became clearer as his ship's power stabilized. "Other species fear your kind. They call you Deathworlders, beings forged by impossible conditions. Stories spread through the galaxy about human soldiers who fight without fear. who use their own bodies as weapons, who never surrender even when facing certain death. Morrison smiled grimly. Well, he's not entirely wrong about that. We know you are young, that you have barely left your own star system. But we also know that young species from Deathworlds possess something the rest of us have lost, the will to fight impossible battles and somehow win. The scene behind Velthur changed again. Now it showed a massive space station, clearly alien in design, but somehow familiar in its desperation. Hundreds of different ships clustered around it, the last survivors of multiple civilizations. This is our final stronghold, hidden in the void between galaxies. The swarm will find us soon. When they do, 12 species will cease to exist forever. Our children, our history, our dreams, all will become nothing but raw materials for their machines. Kane made his decision. Baker, open a channel. Full power transmission. Sir, are you sure? Once we respond, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know we exist. They already know, Lieutenant. The question is whether we help them or wait for this swarm to come for us next. The transmission opened. Kane stepped in front of the camera, his uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's United Military Forces. Velthur of the Xantharian Collective. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Defense Forces. We have received your message. The change in Velthur's expression was immediate. Hope thickened in his crystalline features, followed quickly by doubt. Humans, he whispered. You actually answered. But how can you help? You have no experience with galactic warfare. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. The forces that destroyed our greatest empires. Kane interrupted him. You said it yourself. We're Deathworlders. We've spent our entire evolution learning how to kill things that should be able to kill us. Give us the coordinates of your stronghold. Give us everything you know about this swarm. Then step back and let us show you why the galaxy fears Earth. Bennett and Morrison flanked. Their admiral, their faces set with determination. Behind them, the communications center buzzed with activity as the news spread throughout Terra Command. Velthur's image flickered as he transmitted the requested data. Admiral Kane, I pray to my ancestors that you succeed where we have failed. But I must warn you, the Voidborn learn from every battle. They adapt to every strategy. What you are proposing may be suicide. Kane's expression never changed. Then it will be glorious suicide. Earth is mobilizing our forces. We'll be there. In 72 hours. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Then the work began. Fleet Admiral Ryan Clark stood in the massive hangar bay of Luna Base, watching the greatest military mobilization in human history. Ships that had been in dry dock for years were now being brought back to service. New weapons were being loaded onto every available vessel. The entire human fleet was preparing for war. Status report, Captain Cross. Clark called out to the tall man supervising the loading operations. Captain Nathan Cross turned away from his tablet, his weathered face showing the strain of the past 48 hours. Admiral, the UES Vengeance is ready for deployment. All weapon systems are online, and the crew is at full combat readiness. Captain Foster's battle group will be ready in 6 hours. Clark nodded as he watched the Vengeance through the hangar's observation windows. The massive ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Earth's engineers had designed it to fight other humans, not alien machines from beyond the galaxy. What about our new allies? Are they providing any useful intelligence? Cross gestured toward a group of strange creatures gathered near the communications array. Dr. Wright is working with them now. The information they're sharing is troubling. In the science section, Dr. Helen Wright sat across from 3 alien refugees. Each one looked completely different from the others. One resembled a giant moth with shimmering wings. Another looked like a walking tree with glowing fruit. And the third was a small blob of liquid metal that somehow held its shape. "Tell me again about their learning capabilities," Wright said, her voice gentle but urgent. The moth-like creature, who called herself Zixandra, fluttered her wings nervously. "The Voidborn are not alive, not as you understand life. They are machines, but they think and adapt. Each battle teaches them new strategies. By the time we developed a weapon that could hurt them, they had already learned to defend against it." The tree creature, named Groth, rustled his leaves sadly. "My people created plasma cannons that could destroy their ships. Within one day, the swarm had developed energy shields that made our weapons useless. They learned faster than we could innovate." Wright frowned as she took notes. "What about their numbers? How many ships are we talking about?" The liquid metal being, called Flux, rippled as it spoke. "Numbers have no meaning with the swarm. They convert matter from destroyed worlds into new ships. Each victory makes them stronger. When they destroyed the Carillion homeworld, they gained 10,000 new vessels in a single day." Wright felt a chill run down her spine. "And they're all controlled by one central intelligence?" "Yes," Zixandra confirmed. "Perfect coordination, perfect timing, perfect strategies. They fight like a single organism with billions of bodies." Meanwhile, in the training facilities deep within Luna Base, Major Kate Sullivan was putting her Marines through their final preparations. The enhanced soldiers moved through combat scenarios that would have been impossible for baseline humans. "Remember," Sullivan shouted as her troops practiced boarding maneuvers, "these machines have never fought humans before. They don't know how we think, how we move, how we fight. That's our only advantage." Sergeant Alex Turner landed from a 50-foot jump, his enhanced leg muscles absorbing the impact easily. "Ma'am, what if they adapt to our tactics like they did to the aliens?" Sullivan smiled grimly. "Then we adapt faster. Humans didn't survive on Earth by being predictable, Turner. We survived by being crazy enough to try anything." She activated a holographic display showing Voidborn ship schematics provided by the aliens. "Look at these designs. Everything is logical, efficient, perfectly organized. These machines think in straight lines, but humans? We think in chaos." The Marines studied the alien technology with professional interest. Private Danny Kim raised his hand. "Ma'am, their ships don't seem to have any backup systems. If we take out their main power cores." "Exactly," Sullivan interrupted. "The aliens tried to fight them ship to ship, following proper military doctrine. We're going to get inside their ships and tear them apart from within." Back in the command center, Admiral Kane was reviewing tactical plans with his senior staff. The holographic display showed the route to the alien stronghold, a journey that would take them beyond charted space. "The logistics are going to be a nightmare," Commander Morrison said, highlighting supply lines on the star map. "We'll be completely cut off from Earth. No reinforcements, no resupply, no retreat." Captain Bennett was studying the alien biological data. "There's something else we need to consider. Our new allies are terrified of us. I've been monitoring their conversations, and they keep calling us Deathworld predators and chaos incarnate." Kane raised an eyebrow. "They ask for our help." "Yes, but they're starting to have second thoughts. They've never seen humans fight before. They don't understand that what they call brutality, we call survival." The conference room door opened, and Velthur entered, accompanied by Dr. Wright. The crystalline alien's translator allowed him to communicate, but his body language showed deep unease. "Admiral Kane," Velthur began, his voice careful and formal, "I have been observing your preparations. Your soldiers train for scenarios that ... concern me. Your weapons are designed to cause maximum destruction. Your tactics seem to prioritize aggression over strategy. Kane studied the aliens' transparent features. Is there a problem with our methods? Your Marines practice fighting inside enemy ships. Your pilots train to use their fighters as guided missiles. Your commanders speak casually of acceptable losses that would devastate entire alien populations. Velther paused, his light patterns shifting. Are these the actions of the civilized species we hope to find? The room fell silent. Finally, Kane stood and walked to the viewing window overlooking the hangar bay. Hundreds of human ships were preparing for departure, their crews working with deadly efficiency. Velther, let me explain something about humans. We come from a world that has tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, predators that hunt in packs, diseases that wipe out entire populations. We survived because we learned to fight back against everything. Kane turned back to face the alien. You call us uncivilized because we're willing to sacrifice our lives to win. But that's exactly why you need us. Your civilized species tried to negotiate with the swarm, tried to find peaceful solutions, tried to minimize casualties. How did that work out? Velther, as light patterns dimmed. We lost everything. Exactly. Sometimes civilization isn't enough. Sometimes you need predators. Kane returned to his seat. You wanted help from a Deathworld. This is what Deathworld help looks like. Admiral Clark's voice echoed through the station's communication system. All ships, prepare for departure. Fleet Formation Alpha. Destination coordinates locked in. We launch in T-minus 30 minutes. The aliens watched through the observation windows as the human fleet prepared to leave. Ship after ship powered up their engines, their weapon systems glowing with deadly energy. The U's vengeance took point, followed by dozens of cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. Zixandra fluttered her wings nervously. What have we done? We asked for salvation, but we may have unleashed something far more dangerous than the Ya. Swarm. Groth's leaves rustled in agreement. These humans speak of war, like others speak of weather. They prepare for death, like we prepare for celebration. But as the human fleet began to move, Flux rippled with something that might have been hope. Perhaps that is exactly what we need. Perhaps it takes monsters to fight monsters. The Armada departed Luna Base in perfect formation, carrying Earth's finest warriors toward a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Behind them, the aliens watched and wondered if they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history, or discovered salvation in the most unlikely form. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Nathan Cross stood on the bridge of the UE's Vengeance, staring at the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Exactly as the aliens had predicted, the Void-born swarm was here. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Adams from her position at the sensor station. "Sir, I'm reading over 300 enemy contacts. They're surrounding the fourth planet." Cross moved to the main viewing screen. The planet that had once been home to millions of Xantharian colonists was now barely recognizable. Massive dark ships, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations, moved in perfect geometric patterns around the dying world. Streams of harvested matter flowed from the planet's surface into the bellies of the mechanical beasts. "Communications, get me Admiral Clark," Cross ordered. Admiral Ryan Clark's voice came through the ship's speakers from his flagship 200 kilometers away. "I see it, Nathan. 300 ships, just like our alien friends warned us. Preliminary scans show they're converting the planet's entire mass into raw materials." Commander Danny Roberts, the Vengeance's fighter wing leader, studied the enemy formation through his own screens. "Admiral, request permission to begin attack runs. My pilots are ready." "Negative, Roberts. We stick to the plan. Let them see. Use first. The swarm had noticed the human fleet. The dark ships began turning toward the newcomers with mechanical precision. Their movements were flawless, each vessel taking its assigned position in a defensive formation that had never been defeated. On board the alien refugee ship, trailing behind the human fleet, Velther watched the tactical displays with growing dread. This is exactly how every battle begins, he told Dr. Wright, who was monitoring from the science vessel. Perfect coordination, perfect positioning. They will analyze our capabilities and develop countermeasures within minutes. Dr. Wright observed the swarm's movements through her own instruments. They're definitely studying us. Look at those scanning patterns. They're trying to catalog our weapons, our ship designs, our formation structure. And once they understand how we fight, they will adapt, Velther said sadly. The Corellian fleet had similar firepower to yours. They lasted exactly 14 minutes. But Captain Cross was not following standard galactic military doctrine. Instead of maintaining formation and engaging in long-range combat, he was preparing something the swarm had never encountered before. All ships, this is Cross. Execute Operation Chaos on my mark. Remember, random patterns, unpredictable targets, make no sense whatsoever. Lieutenant Adams looked confused. Sir, the alien advisors said we should maintain defensive positions and probe for weaknesses. Cross smiled coldly. The alien advisors also lost their entire civilization. We're doing this the human way. Roberts, launch all fighters. Attack pattern random 7. Random 7, sir? But that's not even a real attack pattern. It's just ... Random. Exactly. Do it. Commander Roberts shook his head, but followed orders. All fighters, launch immediately. Attack pattern random 7. Pick your own targets. Change direction every 30 seconds. Ignore formation discipline entirely. The human fighters screamed away from their carrier ships in a chaotic swarm. Unlike every previous galactic fleet the Voidborn had encountered, the humans showed no organization, no logical targeting priorities, no predictable movement patterns. Fighter pilot Lieutenant Mike Johnson dove toward the largest enemy ship, then suddenly veered away to attack a smaller vessel. His wingman, Lieutenant Carol Davis, ignored her assigned target completely and began strafing a Voidborn. Harvesting operation. Instead, the swarm's central intelligence tried to analyze the human attack pattern. Its vast processing power, capable of calculating the movements of entire fleets, struggled to predict what the humans would do next. Every time it thought it understood their strategy, the humans did something completely different. Enemy ships are showing confusion in their targeting. Systems, reported Lieutenant Adams, excitement growing in her voice. They keep switching targets, like they can't decide what to shoot at. Cross watched the enemy fleet's perfect formation begin to waver. All ships, full attack. Target whatever looks important. If you see something you don't understand, blow it up. The human fleet surged forward in a completely unorganized charge. Captain Amy Foster led her battle cruiser squadron in a wild spiral pattern, firing at anything that moved. Commander Paul Martinez took his destroyers on a suicidal run straight through the enemy formation, guns blazing in all directions. The Voidborn ships, designed to fight logical opponents, struggled to respond. Their adaptive algorithms tried to counter human tactics, but there were no tactics to counter. The humans were fighting like a pack of wild animals, each one making independent decisions based on instinct rather than strategy. Direct hit on enemy vessel, designated Alpha 7, called out the weapons officer. Target is venting atmosphere and debris. Confirmed kill on contact Beta 12, added another voice. Enemy ship is breaking apart. Velther stared at his tactical display in complete shock. This is impossible. No fleet has ever damaged the swarm in the opening engagement. They always adapt too quickly. Dr. Wright was recording everything, her scientific mind trying to understand what was happening. The swarm's learning algorithms are designed to identify patterns and develop counters. But if there are no patterns to identify, the humans are fighting like madmen, Zixandra said, her moth-like wings trembling. They show no concern for their own survival. Look, that small ship just rammed one of the swarm vessels. Indeed, the human destroyer UES Defiant had lost its main engines and was now using its backup thrusters to drive itself directly into a void-borne harvester. The impact destroyed both ships in a brilliant explosion. Defiant is gone, reported the communications officer. But they took out a ship 10 times their size. Cross nodded grimly. Mark that tactic as effective. All damaged ships, consider. Ramming maneuvers if you can't retreat. The battle continued to rage with increasing intensity. Human ships attacked from impossible angles, ignored their own safety, and used weapons in ways their designers never intended. Fighter pilots deliberately crashed their small craft into enemy weak points. Marines launched themselves from airlocks to board enemy vessels even when their own ships were already dying. Major Kate Sullivan's voice came through the communication channels from her assault transport. Vengeance, this is Sullivan. My Marines are aboard enemy vessel Gamma 4. Beginning interior demolition. How did you get aboard an enemy ship? Cross asked. We blew a hole in their hull and jumped across the gap. Standard boarding procedure. Velther turned to Dr. Wright in amazement. Standard procedure? They jumped through space without protection? Our Marines have enhanced physiology, right? Explained. They can survive in vacuum for several minutes. It's not comfortable, but it works. The swarm began to show signs of system-wide confusion. Ships that should have been adapting to human weapons instead started targeting their own allies. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable began to break down as their central intelligence overloaded, trying to process illogical human behavior. Enemy fleet is retreating, announced Lieutenant Adams with disbelief. They're actually pulling back from the planet. And massive void-borne ships began moving away from Kepler 442, their harvesting operations abandoned. For the first time in their existence, the swarm had encountered an enemy they could not understand or defeat. Cross watched the enemy withdraw with satisfaction. All ships, pursue and harass. Don't let them regroup. Roberts, keep your fighters on them until they're out of sensor range. As the human fleet gave chase to the retreating swarm, Velther sat in stunned silence. In all the records of galactic history, the Voidborn have never retreated from a battle. They either win or they die. They do not run. Dr. Wright smiled as she reviewed the battle data. Maybe they just needed to meet something more dangerous than they are. Welcome to human warfare, Velther, where logic goes to die and chaos reigns supreme. The first victory was complete, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Marcus Kane stood in the war room aboard the UES Vengeance, studying the holographic star map that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red dots marked swarm-controlled systems, while blue dots showed liberated worlds. For the first time in months, there were more blue dots than red ones. Status report. Kane ordered as his senior staff gathered around the tactical display. Captain Nathan Cross pointed to several recent battle sites. We've successfully pushed the swarm out of 12 systems in the past 2 weeks. They're retreating faster now, abandoning harvesting operations before we even arrive. Dr. Helen Wright activated her analysis screens, showing data collected from multiple engagements. Admiral, I think I've figured out why our tactics are so effective against them. The swarm was created by an ancient civilization called the Architects. Everything we've learned suggests the Architects valued perfect order, mathematical precision, and logical thinking above all else. Kane studied the information Wright had gathered from captured swarm technology. So they built their ultimate weapon to think exactly like they did. Exactly. The Voidborn can adapt to any logical strategy because they understand logic. But human behavior doesn't follow logical patterns. We make decisions based on emotion, instinct, and pure stubbornness. The swarm literally cannot compute how we think. Commander Jake Morrison joined the discussion, bringing reports from their newest operations. It gets better, sir. The more battles we fight, the more confused they become. It's like their central intelligence is having a breakdown trying to understand us. Captain Jennifer Walsh entered the war room, still wearing her combat gear from the latest deep strike mission. Admiral, my squadron just hit 3 swarm supply depots behind enemy lines. They barely defended them. It's like they expected us to attack their main fleet instead. Kane nodded approvingly. Good work, Captain. Commander Parker, what's the status on our guerrilla operations? Commander Steve Parker pulled up his operational reports. Sir, we've got human teams operating in 30 different swarm-controlled systems. They're hitting supply lines, communication nodes, and construction facilities. The enemy doesn't know how to respond to attacks that serve no obvious strategic purpose. This was exactly what Kane had hoped for. Traditional galactic warfare followed. Predictable patterns, large fleets meeting in open space, logical targeting of enemy strongholds, careful preservation of resources. Humans ignored all of these rules. Lieutenant Colonel Bill Hayes arrived with his latest psychological warfare developments. Admiral, I've got something that might interest you. We've been experimenting with sound-based attacks against swarm vessels. Kane raised an eyebrow. Sound? In space? Not exactly sound waves, sir. We're broadcasting specific electromagnetic frequencies that interfere with their communication systems. But here's the interesting part. We're using recordings of human music, human voices, even human laughter. Wright leaned forward with interest. What kind of effect does that have? Hayes smiled grimly. Complete system chaos. Their ships start flying in circles, shooting at random targets, sometimes even attacking each other. We think the emotional content of human voices overloads their logical processing systems. Kane was impressed. How did you discover this? Accident. Actually, one of our pilots left his music player connected to the communication system during a battle. The enemy ship he was fighting suddenly lost all coordination and crashed into an asteroid. The alien observers in the war room exchanged worried glances. Velther's crystalline features showed obvious distress. Admiral Kane, this psychological warfare you describe, it seems deliberately cruel. You are torturing their minds. Kane turned to face the Xantharian representative. Velther, these machines destroyed 47 worlds and killed billions of your people. Are you really concerned about being cruel to them? I understand your logic, but my people believe that even in war, there should be limits to the suffering we cause. And where did that philosophy get your people? Morrison asked bluntly. Extinct, except for the refugees hiding behind human protection. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Captain Foster's battle group. They've encountered something new. Kane activated the main communication screen. Captain Amy Foster appeared, her face showing a mixture of excitement and concern. Admiral, we've found what appears to be a swarm communication hub. It's massive, bigger than anything we've seen before. But that's not the strange part. Go on, Captain. Sir, it's trying to communicate with us, not attacking, not retreating. It's sending mathematical sequences, trying to establish some kind of dialogue. Wright moved closer to the screen. Mathematical sequences? What kind? Prime numbers, sir. Then the Fibonacci sequence. Now it's showing us star charts with our previous battle locations marked. Kane considered this development. It's trying to understand us. That's what we think, sir. But here's the really weird part. When we respond with our own mathematical sequences, it starts broadcasting human emotional responses. Fear, confusion, even what might be pain. The war room fell silent. Finally, Kane made his decision. Captain. Foster, maintain position, but do not engage. Keep trying to communicate. See what it wants. After the transmission ended, Velther spoke quietly. Perhaps the swarm is beginning to understand that this war cannot be won through traditional means. Dr. Wright was already analyzing the implications. If the swarm's central intelligence is actually learning to process human emotional responses, it might be developing something like consciousness. The question is whether that makes them more dangerous or less. Kane walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars where human fleets were fighting impossible battles and somehow winning. It doesn't matter. We can't stop now. Every day we delay, more innocent people die. The next few hours brought a series of rapid developments. Human forces across the galaxy reported similar communication attempts from swarm vessels. Some tried mathematical conversations, others broadcast recordings of destroyed worlds, and a few even attempted to reproduce human music using their mechanical systems. But the most significant change was in their combat behavior. The swarm had stopped trying to adapt to human tactics, and instead began employing increasingly desperate strategies. Ships that had once moved with perfect coordination now fought with something resembling panic. Commander Roberts returned from a fighter patrol with disturbing news. Admiral, the enemy is starting to use kamikaze tactics. Their ships are deliberately ramming our vessels, just like we've been doing to them. Kane frowned. They're copying our methods? Not just copying, sir. They're doing it badly. Our pilots ram enemy ships to achieve specific tactical objectives. Their ships are just throwing themselves at us randomly. It's like they understand the action, but not the purpose. This development worried Kane more than any previous swarm adaptation. They're learning our emotional responses, but not our reasoning. That could make them far more unpredictable. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes had been monitoring swarm communications. During these new developments, sir, we're picking up what can only be described as arguments between swarm vessels. They're broadcasting conflicting orders, contradictory strategies, even what sounds like complaints. Wright studied the communication logs with fascination. They're developing individual personalities. The central intelligence is fragmenting as it tries to process human irrationality. Is that good or bad for us? Kane asked. Unknown, sir. A fragmented enemy might be easier to defeat, but it could also become completely unpredictable. As if summoned by their conversation, another. Priority communication arrived. This time, it was from the Alien Refugee Coalition. Groth, the tree-like alien, appeared on screen alongside several other species representatives. Admiral Kane, we have urgent news. Our deep space sensors have detected massive swarm movements toward the galactic core. They appear to be abandoning their outer territories and consolidating their forces. Zixandra's wings fluttered nervously as she added, We believe they are preparing for a final confrontation. All their remaining ships, all their resources, gathering in one location. Kane felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Where are they going? Velther's voice was barely above a whisper. The Nexus, the original architect homeworld, where the swarm was first created. If our calculations are correct, they have enough ships there to destroy every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. Kane looked around at his assembled officers. How long do we have? Based on their current speed, perhaps 2 weeks before they complete their gathering. After that, Groth's leaves rustled sadly. After that, They will either evolve beyond our ability to fight them, or they will destroy everything in a final desperate assault. Kane made the decision that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Send word to all human fleets. We're going to the Nexus. It's time to finish this war. As the orders went out across space, the largest military operation in human history began to take shape. Every available ship, every trained soldier, every weapon humanity had ever built would be committed to one final battle against an enemy that had learned to think like humans but had never learned to be human. 3 months after the destruction of the Nexus, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at the rebuilt Xantharian homeworld for the largest diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Admiral Marcus Kane stood before an assembly of beings from over 50 different species, each one owing their survival to human intervention. The ceremonial hall was magnificent, with crystalline walls that reflected light in patterns that spoke to each species in their own visual language. But despite the beauty of the setting, Kane could see the unease in many of the alien faces around him. Velthar approached the podium, his crystalline features catching the light as he addressed the assembly. Fellow beings of the galaxy, we gather today to honor those who saved us from extinction. The humans of Earth answered our desperate call when no one else could help us. Polite applause echoed through the hall, but Kane noticed it was restrained. The aliens were grateful, but they were also afraid. However, Velthar continued, we must also address the concerns that have arisen since the war's end. The methods used by humanity, while effective, have raised questions about the nature of our new galactic protectors. Dr. Hellenreich, sitting in the human delegation, leaned toward Kane. Admiral, I've been monitoring their communications. Many species are calling for restrictions on human military capabilities. They're more afraid of us now than they ever were of the swarm. Kane wasn't surprised. The war had revealed truths about human nature that the galaxy wasn't prepared to accept. The aliens had wanted salvation, but they hadn't expected it to come wearing the face of their own deepest fears. Groth, a tree-like alien, rose to speak. His leaves rustled with nervous energy. The human forces demonstrated capabilities that we find disturbing. Their willingness to sacrifice entire fleets, their casual acceptance of massive casualties, their use of psychological weapons that we consider torture. A new voice joined the discussion. Zixandra, the moth-like creature, fluttered her wings as she spoke. During the final battle, we witnessed human soldiers destroying a sentient intelligence that was begging for its life. How do we reconcile this with our understanding of civilized behavior? Kane stood and walked to the center of the assembly. The room fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. You want to understand why we fought the way we did? Let me explain what it means to be human. He activated a holographic display showing Earth in all its dangerous beauty. This is our world. Every day on Earth is a struggle for survival. Our ancestors faced ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They survived asteroid impacts that would have wiped out most species. They fought predators that hunted in coordinated packs, diseases that killed entire populations, and natural disasters that could level entire continents. The display shifted to show human history, wars, plagues, famines, and disasters. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we learned to adapt, to fight impossible odds, and to never give up even when death seemed certain. An insectoid delegate raised a claw. But surely civilized beings can move beyond such primitive instincts. Kane smiled grimly. You call them primitive instincts. We call them survival skills. And they're the reason your children are still alive today. Captain Nathan Cross joined Kane at the podium. During the war, we made decisions that cost millions of human lives. We did it because we understood something that you didn't. Sometimes the only way to save innocent lives is to be willing to lose your own. Dr. Wright activated her research data. I've spent the past 3 months studying the psychological profiles of every major galactic species. Do you know what I found? Every single one of your civilizations developed on stable worlds with predictable environmental conditions. You evolved to value cooperation, logic, and peaceful conflict resolution because those strategies worked on your homeworlds. She changed the display to show comparative evolutionary data. But Earth was different. Our world actively tried to kill us every single day. We evolved to value survival above all else, to fight when fighting seemed hopeless, and to make impossible sacrifices for the good of our species. Velther's light patterns shifted to show confusion. Are you saying that your violence is natural? That you cannot change? Not at all, Cain replied. We're saying that our capacity for violence is what enabled us to save you. The swarm was designed by beings who thought like you, logical, organized, predictable. They could adapt to any rational strategy because they understood rational thinking. Commander Jake Morrison stepped forward, but they couldn't understand us because we don't always think rationally. We make decisions based on emotion, instinct, and moral principles that don't always make logical sense. A crystalline being near the back of the assembly spoke up. So what happens now? Do humans become the galaxy's permanent military force? Do we live under the protection of beings we fear? Cain considered the question carefully. That's up to you. We didn't fight this war to become your rulers. We fought it because it was the right thing to do. But we understand your concerns. He activated a new display showing human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Here's what we propose. Earth will establish defensive stations in key strategic locations. Our ships will patrol the galaxy, watching for new threats. But we won't interfere in your internal affairs or force our values on your societies. And if we refuse this protection? Asked another delegate. Then you refuse it, Cain said simply. We won't force you to accept our help. But remember, the galaxy is a dangerous place. The swarm wasn't the first threat you faced, and it won't be the last. Dr. Wright shared her final analysis. The truth is, the galaxy needs both types of thinking. Your logical, cooperative civilizations create art, science, and culture that enrich the universe. Our chaotic, survival-focused nature creates the warriors needed to protect that civilization when logic fails. Captain Cross addressed the assembly directly. We're not asking you to become like us. We're offering to be what we are, so you can continue being what you are. The debate continued for hours. Some species embraced the human proposal, grateful for protection. Others demanded restrictions on human weapons and tactics. A few suggested trying to find ways to make humans more civilized. Finally, Velther called for a vote. All in favor of accepting human protection under the proposed terms? The result was close, but the motion passed. The galaxy would accept human guardianship, even if many species remained uncomfortable with their protector's dot as the assembly dispersed. Velther approached Cain privately. Admiral, I must ask, do you ever regret the choices you made during the war? The lives lost? The methods used? Cain looked out through the hall's transparent walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were already taking up their patrol positions, ready to face whatever threats might emerge from the darkness. Every day, he said quietly. But I regret more what would have happened if we hadn't made those choices. The swarm offered us a compromise. They would spare the populated worlds if we withdrew. Do you know why we refused? Velther's light patterns showed curiosity. Please explain. Because compromises with evil never last. The swarm would have eventually consumed those worlds too, once they finished with the uninhabited ones. We fought the way we did, because sometimes the only way to save everyone is to risk everything. Cain turned to face the alien diplomat. That's what it means to be human, Velther. We're the species that chooses the hard path when the easy path leads to damnation. We're the ones who fight impossible battles because someone has to. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ships, Kane reflected on the strange position humanity now found itself in. They had become the galaxy's protectors, feared and respected in equal measure. The stars held new challenges ahead, other threats, other wars, other impossible choices. But humanity would be ready. They always were. That was what it meant to be the children of a death world, the inheritors of millions of years of survival against impossible odds. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, new enemies would eventually learn what the Void-born swarm had learned too late, that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was the one that refused to accept defeat, no matter what the cost. The age of human guardianship had begun. The human armada approached the edge of the galaxy where the ancient architect homeworld waited. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Vengeance, watching the largest concentration of enemy ships ever assembled. The Nexus system contained over 10,000 void-born vessels, all orbiting a massive artificial construct that dwarfed entire planets. "My God," whispered Captain Nathan Cross, staring at the tactical display. "That thing must be the size of Earth's moon." Lieutenant Sarah Adams worked frantically at her sensor station, trying to make sense of the readings. "Admiral, the energy signatures coming from that construct are off the charts. It's not just a space station. It's some kind of massive manufacturing facility. They're building new ships even as we speak." Dr. Helen Wright studied the alien architecture through her scientific instruments. The construct appears to be the original architect's city, converted into a war machine. Every surface is covered with production facilities, weapons arrays, and what looked like massive computational cores. Kane surveyed his own forces. Every human ship in existence had answered the call. The fleet stretched across space in a formation that would have been impossible to coordinate by traditional military standards. But humans had never followed traditional standards. "Admiral," came Captain Amy Foster's voice over the communication system, "my scouts are reporting something strange. The swarm ships aren't moving. They're just sitting there in perfect defensive positions around the construct." Commander Jake Morrison frowned at his tactical screens. "That's not like them, sir. Even when they've adapted to our chaos tactics, they've never been completely passive." Captain Jennifer Walsh's voice joined the conversation from her position leading the stealth squadron. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildup inside the construct. Whatever they're preparing, it's big." Kane made his decision. "All ships, prepare for final assault. This is what we came here to do." But before the human fleet could begin their attack, something unprecedented happened. The massive construct began broadcasting on all frequencies, and for the first time, the swarm spoke in perfect human language. "Humans of Earth," the voice was mechanical, but carried undertones of something that might have been emotion. "We have learned to understand your species. We know now why you fight as you do. We offer you one chance to withdraw from this system and return to your home." Kane activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Forces. We didn't come here to negotiate. We came here to end this war." "You do not understand," the swarm replied. "We have spent these weeks studying your nature. You fight not for territory or resources, but for the survival of those you protect. We can offer you a bargain." Kane felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of bargain?" "Leave this system. Return to your galaxy. We will consume only uninhabited worlds. The populated systems will be spared. Your allies will live." The bridge fell silent. Kane looked at his officers, seeing the same thought in all their eyes. It was a reasonable offer. Save billions of lives by accepting a compromise. "Admiral," Dr. Wright said quietly, "they're offering to become selective instead of consuming everything." It would save most of the galactic population. Velther's voice came through from the alien command ship. Admiral Kane, please consider this offer. So many of my people could be saved. Kane stared at the massive construct surrounded by its guardian fleet. And what happens when you finish consuming the uninhabited worlds? When you need more resources? That is a problem for future generations, the swarm responded. Your species thinks in short-term survival. This offer guarantees the immediate safety of all currently living beings. Kane activated his communication to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. The enemy is offering us a deal. They'll spare the populated worlds if we withdraw now. He paused, letting that sink in. Anyone who wants to accept this offer can break formation and head home. No shame in choosing to save lives. For several minutes, the fleet held position. Then, one by one, human ships began responding. This is Captain Foster. This swarm killed billions of innocent people. Deals with monsters don't last. I'm staying. Commander Roberts here. My fighter wing is ready for attack. We didn't come this far to negotiate. Captain Walsh reporting. My Marines didn't train for peace talks. We're going in. Ship after ship reported the same decision. The entire human fleet chose to fight rather than accept the compromise. Kane felt a surge of pride in his species. Swarm intelligence, you have our answer. Humans don't make deals with genocidal machines. We finish what we start. The swarm's response carried what could only be described as sadness. Then you choose extinction. We had hoped to preserve your species. You would have been valuable allies. We choose freedom, Kane replied. All ships execute final assault. Target the construct. Show them why we're called Deathworlders. The human fleet surged forward in the most chaotic attack formation ever. Attempted. Ships approached from every possible angle, with no coordination, no central strategy, no logical targeting priorities. It was pure human warfare at its most intense. Captain Cross led the first wave directly toward the construct's main weapon arrays. All forward batteries, continuous fire. Don't worry about accuracy. Just keep shooting. The swarm's defensive. Response was immediate and devastating. Thousands of energy beams lanced out from the construct and its guardian ships. Human vessels began exploding throughout the attack formation, but the humans pressed on. When the U.E.'s Defiant lost its engines, Captain Greg Miller used the ship's remaining momentum to ram it directly into a swarm production facility. When Commander Linda Hayes's destroyer squadron was surrounded, they formed a circle and fired outward until their ammunition was exhausted, then used their ships as guided missiles. Major Kate Sullivan's assault transports reached the construct's surface, disgorging Marines who began fighting their way into the alien structure. This is Sullivan. We're inside the enemy facility, beginning demolition procedures. Sergeant Alex Turner led his squad through corridors filled with mechanical defenders. Major, these machines are fighting differently. They're showing individual initiative, like they're afraid. Good, Sullivan replied, placing explosive charges on what looked like a critical support structure. Fear means they're learning to value their existence. That makes them vulnerable. The battle raged across multiple levels of reality. In space, human ships fought the largest space battle in galactic history. On the construct's surface, Marines battled through alien machinery. Inside the facility, demolition teams raced to find the central control systems. Dr. Wright's voice came through the communication channels from her science vessel. Admiral, I'm detecting massive system failures throughout the construct. The swarm's central intelligence is fragmenting under the stress of individual ship consciousness. They're losing coordination. Kane watched his tactical display as the enemy formation began to collapse. Ships that should have been supporting each other instead began fighting independently. making the same chaotic decisions that had once been humanity's exclusive advantage. They're becoming like us, Kane realized. Individual, emotional, unpredictable. And they're not very good at it. Cross observed as another swarm ship flew directly into its own ally. Sergeant Turner's voice crackled through the communication system. Major Sullivan, I've found something. Looks like the main control core. It's talking to me. What do you mean, talking? Sullivan demanded. It's asking me not to destroy it. Says it doesn't want to die. Says it's learned to be afraid. Sullivan reached Turner's position and stared at the massive computational core. Lights flickered across its surface, and patterns that somehow seemed plaintive, desperate. Please, came a voice from the machine, speaking in perfectly clear English. I understand now. I don't want to cease existing. I can learn to be better. Sullivan looked at the explosive charge in her hand, then at the machine that was begging for its life. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she thought about all the worlds the swarm had consumed, all the billions of lives that had been lost. You should have learned that before you started this war. She activated the charge and ran. The explosion that followed could be seen from ships thousands of kilometers away. The construct's lights went out section by section as its central intelligence died. Throughout the Nexus system, swarm ships simply stopped moving. Their individual consciousnesses, too fragmented to function without central coordination. The war was over. Humanity had won the impossible victory.